Hi there. I hope that everyone is doing well. This is a new Live with Ghalia chat, and I'm connecting today with Liza to talk about a very interesting subject related to the brand's offering or the brand's retail architecture. And we're going to be focusing on the importance of that architecture and how it helps brands be more profitable. We're going to be talking in detail about that, and we're going to be paying a lot of attention to the importance of the brand in general, the offering in particular, and then the offering in different brand contexts, and how this could help in generating the results that the brands desire. But Lisa is going to be telling us more about that. Let me log in with Lisa. Kick off this conversation. Lisa, I don't know if you are managing to see my request, but just accept as you do. And of course, we welcome any comments or questions that you might have along the way. So please don't hesitate to drop them in. And then we can, of course, answer them for you. So let me connect with Lisa to kick off with this conversation. Thank you everyone for joining in. Okay, so Lisa should be connecting in a few seconds. Lisa, I will resend the invitation. I don't know if you're managing to you have to just accept the invitation, Lisa, on the screen. Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I've never done this before, so I apologize for the technical difficulties.
We love technology. We love technology.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thanks for having me today.
I'm so happy to have you, and thank you for doing this.
Of course, my pleasure.
How's everything on your end?
No, it's good. I mean, right now we're at 1 p.m. Eastern, so just, getting through the day. But no, things are good.
Perfect. Lisa, yeah. I didn't do much of an introduction because I generally like to start that as soon as we join together through the conversation. I didn't do any intro actually about who you are. I just introduced the topic that we were going to discuss. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about you and what you have been doing lately.
Sure. So my name is Liza. I currently live in Canada. I'm from the UK, so I'm very familiar with UK brands and, of course, the European retail industry. I actually have my own practice right now called Retail Strategy Group, and I do a lot of speaking events and under the banner of the Merchant Life. I have a newsletter. And what I talk about is really the nuances that are happening in today's retail landscape, specifically for retailers, merchants, product developers, product creators. And I've been in the industry for about 22 years now. And I started my career in buying. So I've been in the industry, pretty deep into the industry across different, luxury brands, design-led brands, as well as department stores from luxury to mid-market. And in my buying career, I've seen a lot of things around, let's say, guiding principles and foundations that we're using today, and how we could actually streamline some of those things. About 3 years ago, I shifted from industry into consulting. I was with Ralph Lauren for a number of years, and Monaco more recently. And while I shifted into consulting, I actually worked with Nike for a couple of years, and I worked on their speed to market initiatives, direct to consumer strategy, as well as some of the work around responsible retail sustainability for materials management. And of course, merchandising and enabling digitization across the line plan, which I think we're going to talk about today.
Yes, of course. And talking about the industry, 20 years ago, things I think were different, right? And a lot has happened during the past 20 years, yet alone during the past couple of years. How did you see, like globally, the change within the retail industry?
Well, I mean, if we think about merchandising and planning, actually not much has changed. Other than the fact that if you were a vendor, you were faxing in your orders, if you're, you know, a department store or a retail store. But other than that, I'd say not much has changed. But the pandemic did accelerate some things like digitization across retail, processes from planning and merchandising to ways of marketing through different platforms. And of course, the customer experience, which I know that we may touch on. Excuse me.
Right.
But yeah, not much has changed. I mean, as I talk to a lot of my friends in the buying community and in the planning community, you know, we're still using Excel. We're still very manual driven in a lot of our analysis. I talk about analysis paralysis. A lot of people, you know that term pretty well, like on Mondays and what it feels like. But that's really something that we need to start shifting as we enable more technology to remove that manual work and introduce data and analytics a little bit more than we have in the past. And of course, that's going to take time because retailers don't love change. We know that already, you know.
Yeah.
But that's where advocates like you and I can come in and say, you know what, if you do, you know, these three things and you digitize some of these processes, you're going to have a lot more time to be strategic in some of the thinking that you're doing around who your customer is and building that assortment for your customer.
Right. But if we look at the context, could we say that 20 years ago, we had more, we were leaning more towards a product orientation, whereas today we are leaning more towards the access of the product through our different touch points. Is this perspective helping retailers or maybe teaching them think differently in terms of managing their collections? And how so, Lisa?
Yes. I would say yes. The opportunities right now, just across selling different platforms, on different platforms, using social media to get closer to your customer, to build that relationship with your customer, which should then close that feedback loop, which, you know, we love to talk about there. Where retailers ask customers what they're looking for, or we, you know, use sales history and trends to understand what customers are looking for. So introducing different platforms in today's world will really get us closer to that customer and putting them in the middle of everything we do, whether it is curating experiences or localizing assortments, and streamlining some of that, maybe some of the brands that you're selling to really give the customer what they're looking for. And using platforms like, you know, TikTok and other social platforms to not only sell product, but to engage with your customer. I think there's something beautiful about that. And we can get closer to them and talk to them more than we ever have.
Right. So this notion of, or this variable and dimension of proximity, which is becoming very important in retail, but we're touching on that in a few. I would like to also ask whether today the fact that retailers have a lot of choice in terms of format is rather not helping them sell more. We actually see that many retailers open up on different formats to touch with potential audiences. However, they do not, at the end of the year, say that they had a positive sales or a positive revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that they're doing wrong internally in terms of allocating their merchandise through platforms? Are they not thinking of their assortments well and allocating them through their different platforms?
I mean, that's a pretty loaded question, because when we think about assortments across channel, there should be some consistency. Whether you're selling, in a physical store, if you're wholesaling to a department store, or if you're selling through your own DTC channel, there must be some cohesiveness and something to bring your brand messaging together and to be clear about your brand messaging. And it really does come down to product. I always say that it's so important to delight the customer, be customer obsessed when you're either a buyer buying brands, or if you're a design-led retailer like a Zara. Very important to understand where your customers are shopping and how they're shopping, and if they're shopping across channel. And most are, because when we think about our own shopping journey, what we're doing is we are digital first, right? So we check online, see what's available. We're looking for, something beautiful from Balenciaga. So we're looking on, Essence, we're looking at Selfridges, we're looking at Harrods, we're looking at directly at Balenciaga. And what that tells us is that me as a customer is that I am digital first. I'm pre-shopping before I go into a store, before I actually click and make that purchase. So it's important for that brand to make sure that not only the experience is seamless, but the messaging is the same. Price points are the same. Price parity is a challenge right now, especially as retailers and brands are shifting the way that they're working, and they're streamlining and I would say consolidating some of their teams and practices. So they're reducing the size of those teams. The pandemic really forced us to change the way that we're working, which hopefully brands and retailers are using to improve the way that they're working. Right. Which is where I come in, and we're like, have you added digital product creation when you're creating product? Are you using more digital tools to communicate with your factories for your tech pack? Are you using the same tools across all categories? Because I've definitely seen it in my lifetime where bottoms and tops are using different digital tools.
Right.
Yes. And there's a lot of, I call it low-hanging fruit and quick wins that, retailers can go into their ways of working and make those changes to help design teams and creators and developers focus on the product and getting closer to that customer and giving the customer what they're looking for by walking the shop floor or going online and shopping themselves and seeing what that experience is. But if they don't have the time to do that, and they're bogged down with, all teams working in different ways, or insights coming through from, marketing teams versus product teams, that's going to be very challenging for a retailer as they, want to get closer to the customer and faster to market.
Right, because it would be breaking actually the potential of growth between all of these departments. And especially when we're saying that, we're looking at an incoherence in terms of vision, and all of these departments, as much as the company grows, could become more fragmented, which is a shame, right? So if we go back like to the initial concept of the brand and the brand's identity, how do we conceive a collection architecture? Because most of us have the tendency at a consultancy level to go and look at the processes of buying a collection or designing a collection, and we sometimes notice that there is no objective at all. We sometimes tend to fill in our space rather than to conceive an offering. So in your opinion, what is a collection architecture strategy?
So what I would say to anyone that, either if I'm working with a retailer or brand, or even some of the work that I've previously done in industry as a buyer, what I would say is you need to understand where are your bottlenecks. that's the first question I would ask.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
look at current state. Let's see, how are we working today? And is there a way to remove some of those redundancies, remove those manual tasks, infuse digital tools or digitization to help you reduce that time to market? So many apparel brands, we look at 52 to 55 weeks in their line plan and in their calendar. And what I mean by that is the activities involved from concept to go to market. What I have seen in my lifetime is that at the beginning of concept, before you're even developing your assortment plan and slotting in, what's innovation, what's core, what's basics, and of course what's fashion, you're not everybody is on the same page at the same time. So we're not having cross-functional teams like sourcing and costing, as well as design and development and the leadership team, but also marketing at the table at the same time before concept. So if we could get them all in the same room at the same time, along with insights, so that we're able to use data to drive some of those decisions around assortment planning and category depth and number of options and SKUs, etc., then at least we're all on the same page at the start before you even start planning your line. It's amazing how many cooks there are in the kitchen, let's call it. But what you need is to streamline those, not only the number of decision makers, but have the right people in the room.
Right.
And it sounds simple, but it's actually
very complicated.
It's tough. Yes, it's tough because, like I said, retailers don't like change. So we're so used to working in these traditional old school ways that as soon as you infuse some newness, people get worried, right? Change management is part of any challenge when you're looking to infuse new ways of working. But in saying that, I think that there's a lot of opportunities, and I think that many retailers and brands are seeing that now as speed to market becomes so much more important, as responsible retail and sustainability becomes more top of mind than ever. And what we're seeing in the planet and around climate, and of course ethical standards around production and manufacturing, it's great because not only consumers are actually a lot more knowledgeable, but so are creators, designers, developers, where they never have had that access to information before. So that can only lead to good things. I'm super positive about that.
You're confident, which is good.
I am. Yeah. Yes.
And this relationship, as you said, especially getting complicated as soon as we go out of the office, meaning sometimes if we are outsourcing or working with an external entity to either design or to produce, etc., we see that there are cultural differences that could be, at the end of the day, seen clearly in our product. So how I know that we are refraining to a lot of consolidation in terms of processes, etc. But how can we also acculture people to think in the same direction and hopefully develop our product in the way that we want to?
I think at this stage, as we're still in a global pandemic and we are trying to manage through supply chain chaos and disruption, and of course what's happening to our planet, I think that retailers and buyers and merchants and brands, they don't have a choice. So we're in it and the changes are happening because there's no way to move forward without making change. And to think that we're going to go back to pre-pandemic ways of working, I think is delusional, because we don't have a choice but to change. And now we have more tools than ever to give us informative decisions around who the customer is, how do we align with their values, and of course what's happening on the factory floor, as many factories are closing right now. And it's so difficult to even get product onto a ship to get across different countries. So like I said, we don't have a choice but to think about how we're planning our assortments. Are we planning too much? How do we change the way that factories look at minimum order quantities? How do we reduce overbuying and overproduction and really get to that point where we understand the customers so well that we're giving them not only the right product, but the right product at the right time and through the right channel.
Wow. I mean, this is like the ideal situation. And you're right, we should be invited to rethink
Yeah.
our processes. And we're talking again about this change that also led us to move out of a product orientation to a service orientation, and then to this experiential orientation that not only wants the customer to buy the product, but buys it in the best way possible, right?
Yes.
So how did this experience economy influence the retailer's conception towards the offering? Does this collection architecture or triangle through the levels of products that you earlier mentioned changed a little bit
Yes.
as well?
Yeah,
How
absolutely. So? I think that as we look at the traditional brands, retailers out there, and how they are pushing for change in terms of how they look at core fashion and innovation within the assortment, within the architecture as they're planning the line, what they're looking to help delight the customer with. And what I would say to that is that the way that we look at the line plan and the architecture in this linear way, or even in this pyramid, what we need to do is actually scrap that whole thing and put the customer in the middle, and then think about all the types of product that they would like to see and how we could involve them in collaboration and validation of product. And that way you kind of remove that guesswork where many brands, we test a lot of product on the shop floor. But if we think about not only how many touch points it takes to develop that product and get it onto the shop floor or on your website, and that it may not perform and it's going to end up in markdowns because it was a test. The fact is, if we could test beforehand, we could reduce not only the time to market, we could involve the customer in validating the product, whether it's colors or fabrics, or even aesthetic. You could reduce that time to market, but also reduce the guesswork, right? That comes with that. I don't know if I answered your question, because I think I went off on a tangent.
No,
I do think it's important to put the customer in the middle.
Exactly. It's really important, because we wanted to talk about that anyway. And it made me think of a question, because I was calculating along with you. And every time we used to develop actually a collection, we used to work on percentages to fit in a whole bundle. And I was thinking of the question, which was obvious. I mean, Lisa, would there even be an equilibrium in our collection? Is there a whole bundle that should hold up different products, or does this equation even come in handy today? Because if we are thinking in terms of customer centricity, everything else changes, right?
Yeah, it does. And also the way we look at our collection changes. So you brought up percentages, and as former merchants and planners or retailers on this live, or that will watch this later, they'll know what we're talking about when we think about, 60% core, 40% fashion, or the 80-20 rule. We love to talk about the 80-20 rule, but really we need to think of things differently. So what we need to do is infuse seasonless into our collections, so that we're moving away from the traditional fashion cycles that we're used to working in. Because what we do know is that when we do have core and basics, we do bring them back every season. So why don't we call them seasonless? And that way they have their place, and we don't have to, mark them down. We don't have to waste time and energy on core and seasonless product that we know already sells and the fits are great, and we don't need to reinvent them. So when we look at developing product within your line plan, what you need to do is think about seasonless. Maybe at the top of the year, you don't need to look at it every season, and think about what is going to excite your customers and delight them, and that's innovation and fashion. Right. And if we could spend our energy on the products that they take the longest to develop and create, if we could take our time and energy and use it into testing new textiles or innovative and sustainable materials, then truly you're going to set yourself apart from the brands that are traditionally doing things the same way all the time, and you're used to seeing it, the same season after season, right?
Right, right.
So that's what we don't want. I just lost a light. Sorry.
And
You go live, right?
I always follow up and think of something else to ask you. There are lots of things I wanna ask, but calculating all the time. And most of the actually times when buyers develop their collections, they conceive them because they know that they have certain spaces to fill, right?
Yeah.
And we used to also calculate our collection in terms of space. I don't know if we are still doing this.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
But if
for
we are
front, for sure, we are.
right. And if this new collection is developed in the way that we hope to develop it, like more of a seasonless and attention to capsule collections, if we might call them, etc. Would that change as well the dynamic of our retail store?
Yes, I'd say absolutely. And I think what you're alluding to is maybe a pop-up or a showroom type space. So I think that those experiences are important. And like you said earlier, we live in this experiential infused retail world right now, where it's important to tie experiences to engagement, and then of course tie that to full price sales. But what we need to make sure, and I'll give you an example in a minute, that when we are putting forward these strategies around showroom storefronts or experience storefronts, I think that it's important to still think about the product and how that product is going to translate into sales. And the example I'll give you is there was a store here, a very large retailer, beautiful outerwear, and I won't say which one it is, but what they did was in one of the really beautiful, like a luxury mall, they had a gorgeous experience showroom, sorry. And what you do is you walk through the store and you experience being in this beautiful winter wonderland. And they did showcase some of the product, but at the end of that experience within a mall, in a store, you could not buy the product. So
you have to access it through another touch point?
Yeah, but it's a fail because they're sending you to a department store to buy their brand, when they could actually have learned so much from their customer if they had accepted transactions within that showroom, beautiful experience within a mall where people go to shop. Right. So it's important for retailers to understand how will that experience that they are looking to engage with their customer, how will that translate into lifetime, value and all those great KPIs, but also how will that translate into full price sales? And also, what will you learn from your customer? Did they enjoy that experience? Is that something they'd like to see again? But the feedback that they received is that, oh, but I can't buy this right now. Well, to me, that's a fail. Right. Because that's tied to that experience that I couldn't buy that in that store, so I'm not going to buy this brand.
And it's really important that you're evoking this, because I know that sometimes retailers would today lean towards creating like experiential stores and then sending customers elsewhere, for example, their online stores, for them to receive the product. But at the end of the day, we all want to make some kind of profit. And why not make that profit instantly, right? And this course related to experiences, and that's why I wanted to evoke it many times, is using that term without really realizing that behind experiences, we still need to live from our brand and do some kind of profit, whether instant or recurrent. Absolutely. And that's important, right? Yeah. So now that we have evoked some kind of notion and hence related to store formats. So today we have different store formats, and many brands do maybe venture an online and offline in a flagship, a traditional
Yeah.
boutique, and sometimes pop-up stores or other types of showrooms. And we said earlier that we should have a collection that is cohesive and coherent throughout all of these different touch points. However, are brands invited also to think of special collections in each of the formats?
Yeah, absolutely. I think curation and personalization is key in order to get to give your customer exactly what they're looking for. So, I mean, there's lots of examples around curation and localization of assortments, but what we need to do as merchants and retailers and planners is, again, use data to get closer to that customer. It's that marrying of art and science, which I love to talk about, because not only should you be passionate about product and their brand, but you also have to understand who is shopping the brand, why are they shopping the brand, are we putting outerwear into, you know, a country like Spain, which, you know, they don't need outerwear in the south of Spain, but we're not thinking about localizing that assortment for a country that is warmer versus, you know, Canada or, you know, the US. So
Right.
I think that using data to get closer to that customer, but also being passionate about product and walking the shop floor and trying garments on. I can't tell you how many leaders that I've come across that don't walk the shop floor, and it blows my mind. And merchants and buyers the same. I mean, when I was the buyer and I led the buying teams for Northern Europe for Ralph Lauren, I would get into a store as soon as much as I could.
Right,
And I would talk to the customers, I would help style them, because the more that I know about the customer and how my product fits, the better I can make the assortments for that customer. So my customer in Stockholm was very different from my customer in northern parts of England, and of course my customer in Paris. All very different, all buying the same brand and collection, but curated so that I know that prints don't belong in the Paris store, but they definitely belong in the UK store, because that's what the customer likes to shop.
Right. That's really important. And if we start connecting the dots, we would say, like, in terms of connection and collection, we should really be having a lot of coherence between point A and point B. We need to rely a lot on data and analytics, because this helps us a lot. We need to get in touch with the customer and we need to stay close to the customer. And now we've talked. And the important thing that you've talked about, like just now, is the local aspect of retail, that we should not, I don't know, hide. Sometimes we say that retailers are afraid of that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because but I think that just comes down to retailers thinking that maybe it's more work to localize assortments and curate assortments, but it isn't actually a lot more work, because we're already doing that. Most merchants and buyers and planners are already doing that. They're just not doing it with the assistance of data and insights to help drive some of those decisions, which is, you know, the great thing about the pandemic. Sadly, there's a lot of awful things about the pandemic, but the great thing about the pandemic is that there was this acceleration of retail tech, and there's so many more tools out there than ever before, and people are asking better questions, not only buyers to their vendors and factories, but also on the flip side to their customers. And using that data to understand what the customer is looking for is a beautiful thing. Like, the reason that we are in retail is to sell product and to make customers happy, because that's what product does, right?
Right. To me, at least.
Yeah, me too.
So we're talking about qualitative data and quantitative data, right? And this qualitative data also invites us to think again how important it is to stay close to our customer and to
Yeah.
keep talking to them. Now, with regards to these digital outlets that we can input or infuse in our stores and our store design to help us collect better data or more comprehensive data. Are there any types of tools that retailers favor today? I don't know, I might say like a digital mirror.
Yeah, I would say digital screens and digital mirrors are absolutely on the forefront. I would also say just using live stream, as we're on this now, I think that's something that is very relevant, especially as sales ambassadors or brand ambassadors are looking to go back to, the old school ways of clienteling and getting closer to their customer and getting to know
Yeah.
them. I think that just gives them another tool to engage with their customer, which is awesome to me. So, on top of all that, though, I will say there's a lot of challenges around last mile and curbside and what that means for like fulfillment in store. So just having the right tools for your brand ambassadors in store to see real-time inventory, to understand what it means to have someone solely just dealing with fulfillment. Because let's be honest, when we go into a store, there aren't a lot of salespeople out there. Like we do have a shortage right now. So what we want to do is make sure that we're serving the customer in the best way possible with a brand ambassador that is also a product expert, and leave the fulfillment to another part of the store or to a logistics team in store to manage curbside and teach them how to upsell. But let's give our brand ambassadors a chance in store. Let's give them the tools they need to sell in store, to learn about the product and become those product experts, because that's what's going to be that point of difference from one brand to the next.
Exactly. So going back to a lot of authenticity, right?
Yeah,
and relationship with the brand,
absolutely.
and letting things be natural again. And as you
Yes.
said, the pandemic helped us talk about our brands more,
Yeah.
even if we were confined and in no position to meet physically. All of these beautiful technologies helped many brands get in touch with their customers, especially at a luxury level.
Yes, absolutely.
So can we say, like in a general way, social media also helped I don't know if I say brands or retailers in general, like to sell better or sell differently through, and do you have any examples that might be different than the cliche that we read about or know about?
I mean, you can look at Gucci on TikTok. I mean, the number of followers is wild, and look at how a lot of the luxury brands have entered that gamification space and how they're capturing a new customer segment altogether. Look at things like Pinterest, or even other online marketplaces, giving digitally native brands a chance to capture other market segments, through a marketplace. Like, really, so many retail department stores have marketplaces now, so you're able to access new customers in different geographical regions that you would never have reached before. So it is an exciting time to use technology and social media and platforms across social that you would never have thought to use before the pandemic.
Right. So if we go back to our initial theme of this conversation, we could really see that the talk about mere buying or mere product or collection is nowhere to start in today's retail world, right? There are many other things that we should consider to give more value to our offering and to our product. So should we now just talk about, I don't know, like a classic way to conceive a collection strategy to be fit in the current retail world?
Yeah.
I mean, if we can, like, give some hints that could be useful.
Yeah. I think, you know, if we go back to what we talked about earlier, where having the right people in the room at the same time at the start of concept, I really think is key. Breaking down some of those silos and barriers that are deterring people from working together and cross-functional teams to get on the same page. I think that's a great start. Let's get that down first. And then as we look at the line plan and how we build our architecture and think of what to put into our stores and online and offline, understanding how we can get faster to market by reducing some of those manual tasks, reducing those redundancies around approvals and the work, really. There's a lot of reinvention happening and rework happening that doesn't need to happen. So let's stop reinventing the wheel every season, infuse Seasonless, add some digital tools like digital product creation, start talking to your vendors, understanding where your product is being made and who is making your product. And as we become more transparent, giving, you know, not only the retailers, but also the customers, the ability to track and trace, to understand where their product is coming from, will actually engage your customer in a deeper level. And you'll build that relationship of trust. And once you do that, then you can serve your customer in a much better way.
Right. And educate your customers.
Absolutely.
And Liza, if I listen to that conclusion, I might say that we're inviting retailers to simplify their operations,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
Simplify
Yep.
and just use the tools that are available to you, and they would not only make your life easier, but give you a better result at the end.
Absolutely.
So,
and infusing some of that digitization across how you're creating product and developing product and going to market. And when I say go to market, like around sampling, etc., you're not only going to change the way that you're working, but you're going to give time back to your merchants, your planners, your designers, so that they can focus on being more customer obsessed. You know, delighting the customer, giving them beautiful, great, innovative product that means something, instead of, you know, when we think of, you know, fast fashion where things are just in and out, we don't want to think that way anymore. We need to change the way that we look at product, to add longevity, to look at circularity and resale, to add to our repertoire of retailing. And I think that as long as we start to rethink the way we retail, we will speak to the customers in a whole nother way. And that is critical and beautiful.
Right. Well, thank you for putting it that way.
Yeah.
It's beautiful because you're really coming closer to that, and it's important that most retailers, I mean, digest that idea and start applying it, right? Is there, like, if we come towards the end of this talk, could we say that in today's reality, are there any differences in terms of collection planning and architecture between startup brands and more mature brands, and between maybe fast fashion and more luxury brands?
I think the fundamentals are the same. Getting closer to the customer, putting them in the center of all your decision making, and thinking about your product where all your product has a purpose. All parts of your collection has a purpose. And when we think about it that way, it transcends fashion, fast fashion, luxury, department stores, mass market, or digitally native brands. So as long as we put that customer in the middle and we're thinking about product as all of it has a purpose, everything has a purpose. And I think that really sets the foundation. And that's how we all should be thinking.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Liza. Is there anything that we wanted to talk about and we didn't talk about, or did we manage to?
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
But you know, anything that you know, the folks on live or Instagram want to learn more about, I actually speak about a lot of these topics in my newsletter called The Merchant Life. Especially around fundamentals of what we need to do to think about collections and how we build assortments and create product, but also about how we can localize our assortments, think about diversity in our brand product mix, and how important it is to get closer to the customer and represent the customer, because representation matters more than ever. Yes. And there's so much access out there for our customers and for our merchants that there really is no excuse to do better. And I think as retailers, we can absolutely do better.
Right. And Liza, how can we have access to the newsletter, and how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find me under the social handle of The Merchant Life. And for the newsletter, it's themerchantlife.com. I also have a YouTube channel under The Merchant Life. Also, Instagram, Twitter, all the things. I'm everywhere.
Perfect. I will be resharing that as soon as the live ends. And I want to thank you, Liza, for this beautiful discussion. And I hope that we can cover other areas in future live sessions.
Yes, I'd love to do a session with you around responsible retail and sustainability. That is something I think it would be very interesting for both our viewers.
Yes, thank you for that suggestion, because I have been doing the round from different angles on the matter, and it's really important to highlight it as much as we can. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you. I will directly upload this conversation on IGTV and later on YouTube for those who didn't catch up from the beginning. And please, if you need to get in touch with Lisa, do so. And I will be sharing your Instagram handle, LinkedIn, and the website on the stories in a few. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great
nice day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.